everyone. It's Martha Novak. I'm so glad to be speaking to you today, this Sunday morning. Today is October 6th. I don't know when other people will be listening to this show, but it's going to be a beautiful fall. Guys, we are talking about what makes people unhappy. The thought patterns. They are very predictable things that make people miserable. This has turned out to be a 4-part series. I didn't intend for it to go this long, but we do have things to say, and I kind of ride the horse until the horse gives out. So it's giving out today. I think we will be finishing up our series. There are a lot of things to say about this, obviously, but they're very predictable patterns that we get into as human beings that make us unhappy. And so we're going to talk about those patterns and also how to break them today. Now, I do urge you to go back and listen to the other 3 shows prior to this one. And there's also a sister show that goes with this called Cognitive Distortions. And that's a really important series, too. I think we did quite a number of shows on that. Please listen to both these shows. Listen to anything you want. As a matter of fact, that's why all our shows are archived on Blog Talk Radio, Facebook Live, and YouTube. They go right to YouTube. If we had the technology and it stayed up, it went to YouTube. If not, then you won't find it. Okay. Let's do a little prayer, and we'll launch off where we left off last week, okay? And I hope you all did have a good week. Glad to be with you today. Well, good morning, Julia. I'm so glad that you're with us. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are and all everything in this world is, we thank you so much for being together this morning. All of us who are looking for the authenticity of ourselves and in all of life. Those who want to see past the obvious and into things that most people miss in our unconscious states. We ask for this openness, particularly about ourselves, as we explore and deepen and grow. We so thank you for all of this. And of course, we are going to send the healing from this show out to all of our friends, and hope that they will seize on what they can of it. We thank you so much, dear God. This goes out energetically to everyone, of course, and we thank you so much for all of it. We now open ourselves to see, hear, sense, and know what you would have us do. As we open to the truth that lies in your enlightenment, we give up for 90 minutes knowing anything, for it is you through us and through all things that know it all. We thank you so much, and so it is. Amen. Well, good morning, Hammond, Mark. I think it's Mark. And hello, Kat. Oh, I'm so glad to talk with all of you again. That just thrills me that you all are such faithful listeners. Thank you. All right, so here we are talking about this again. Before I begin, what I want to say as to why I'm giving this lecture is, and by the way, this is not just a lecture. You're welcome to call me anytime you want. This is a live show, so we're at 347-850-1647. If you all would like to make any kind of comment or question, 347-850-1647. All right, going back to what I was saying. The reason that I'm giving a show like this is all of us don't grow up knowing what the range of normal is. You hear people say there is no normal. There isn't a normal, but there is a range of normalcy. And no one has ever defined that for us. So it becomes, now I'm not talking about being traditional. I'm not talking about doing what other people do. I'm not talking about the herd mentality. But there is a range of normal for you. So what we want to do is more or less define what makes people happy, what makes people unhappy, so that you can look at your own life and you can make some changes so that you can be happier. Because there are just some things in life, bottom line, that make you happy. And there are some things, bottom line, that don't make you happy. It never occurs to us, because these things become so habitual, never occurs to us that we should question these things. We should investigate them further to see why we feel that way and to do something about it so we can become happier. So, here we go. We stopped, and I'll reiterate the last one we stopped at. They focused on their weaknesses and not their strengths. We said that will make you miserable every time. Look, all of us have flaws. All of us have weaknesses. But we are much more than that. If you focused on one of those, and if I asked you, is that all you are? Everyone would say, no, that really isn't all I am. If they were honest. You may be feeling depressed and sad and upset, and you may say, yes, that's all I am. Histrionics go along with this, by the way. That's not true, and you know that's not true. We are not just our weaknesses. We are made up of much, much more. And the joy in life is going from this fear-based self that believes in its weaknesses that happened when we were children because we were small and helpless. And the journey is from the fear-based self to the love-based self, which is consciousness in a nutshell. We must not exclusively focus on our weaknesses. We must focus on our strengths as well. If you don't know what those strengths are, help is all around. And the help may be a really good friend that really loves you dearly and is not going to sit there and chatter about all the things that are wrong and focus on their weaknesses too. You are needing a friend that can really say, no, this is who you are. In acting, we have an exercise. You know, I used to be an old acting coach, in fact, I still am. Now, an old acting coach, I guess the old is actually becoming more true. One of the things that we often do is we'll place someone at a Starbucks and we'll have another person interview people that are looking across the room at this person simply sitting there having a cup of coffee or reading a book. And they tell their impressions of that person, which is very interesting because it shows you what you need to work on and what you need to strengthen. And sometimes nothing at all comes out of that except some lovely remarks. So it becomes very important, not what other people think about you. That's just an acting exercise. But what you think about you. That is the key here. What you think about you. Now you'll see with everything I'm going to mention today that the fix is some sort of movement, mental, emotional, physical, or spiritual. So if you don't think well of yourself, there's some work to be done in some arena or in more than one arena. The people that are happy, go for it and find out what that is and change their minds and reinvent the self in a natural and wholesome way, not in an artificial, pretentious way. People that are unhappy stay the same or try to keep it the same. And I urge you not to do that because life is about, it's not that you are the only one ever walking this path. Many of us have walked this path. It's about just getting up and doing it. You know, I think that that movie and I guess it was the book too. I did not read the book. I only saw the film, The Polar Express. I remember that Tom Hanks' character, the conductor, saying to the child at the end of the movie, it doesn't matter where the train is going, just that you get on. I think that's a really wonderful quote. I may have butchered it, but you know where I'm going with that. All right, so let's move on into new information today. By the way, you'll hear some of these things repeated, but a lot of these things are new. So it is in your best interest to go back and listen to the whole series. It really is. Well, hello, Jay. Yeah, Jay says, so right, just do it. Yep, just do it. That's a real good slogan by Nike, but it really is a true one, isn't it? Just do it. You know, I think, and I mean this with all my heart, everybody in the world is afraid. You just think the strong one, you just think people are strong when they don't let that stop them. Don't let that stop you. Just do it. Just do it. And certainly investigate the self, like you're doing on the show. All right. Unhappy people. There are some characteristics that we're talking about, some habits. And one of them is they spend too much time on social media. In other words, they're not connecting with real people. I see so many people that are just constantly on their phones, constantly checking their messages. And it shows, guys, an insecurity. It shows a fear of really getting out there and connecting and being a full participant. You're not a full participant if no one can see you, right? If you're just sending out messages on your social media all the time, on it all the time, seeing what people are doing, and posting those god-awful selfies and everything, which we can do from time to time. It's no big deal. But when you do them ad nauseum, I think there's something to look at there. Because you aren't just that. You're much, much more than that. I think happy people are full participants in life. And, by the way, full contributors. Now, what are you contributing? Well, exactly who you are. The way you see the world, the expression of yourself. That's all the arts are, really, at their finest. But it doesn't have to just be with the arts. It can be, business is an art. Everything is an art. Talking to a friend can be a very elevated and beautiful experience. You can change a life with a word. I was thinking earlier today, you remember real significant moments in your life. Just little tiny things. I remember one of them. You want to know what it is? It doesn't have to do so much with this that we're talking about right now, but in an indirect way it does. I mean, for example, I remember being a child. I could not have been over 7 years old. And I was at one of my mother's friend's house. And he was a very nice, actually, I think we were at somebody else's house, but this friend was there who was at all the parties, right? His name was Ernest. And Ernest was single. He'd stayed single his whole life. He lived with his sister. And he was playing the piano. I even remember what he was playing because he always played it. Pony Boy, Pony Boy, won't you be my... Okay. So he was playing that song, and my mother, out of the blue, asked him if he was happy at work because he had some sort of government job. And Ernest never looked happy, honestly, as I remember him. And he said, no, nobody's happy at their jobs. And that struck me. At 7 years old, that struck me in such a way, because I'm here to tell you that is not a good attitude. That will not make you unhappy. If you are, make you happy. If you are unhappy at your job, it becomes very important now for you to find out what you do really well and go make yourself happy. One of my dearest clients and friends has been a musician all of his life. And he was in fantasy about the musician. Oh, he was going to make all these CDs, and he had all the talent. He really did. But what he didn't realize, he didn't have the audience, right? And so he was in a fantasy world about that. And at one point, he challenged himself so beautifully, and he started studying IT work, and he has become a master at it. He got a job in a fabulous company that knows just how brilliant he is. Guys, he's learned it in 2.5 years. And in this week, he, while the boss was out of town, he was the boss. It's not too late. You see, that's just something we tell ourselves. It's part of the old story. Nothing's too late. I hope all of us, and I wish this in the most sincere way, will die writing a book or reading a book or investigating the next class or, learning something, listening to a book on tape, for God's sake. It's important to keep developing the self. Now, going back to social media, if you're just doing that, there's not much to learn. There's not much to grow from. And I want you all to simply be very aware of how you're using your time, because how you use your time is your communication with the universe. If you want another house, you need to spend some time looking at houses, not 24 hours a day, because it actually blocks the energy, but you need to invest in the energy of what you want in a very wholesome and balanced way. We need to participate in life. And you don't participate, but in the smallest way, when we're on social media. Now, I'm not saying don't do social media, but keep it in perspective, please. You'll notice that I don't post that often. I mean, I have an office that sends out posts with cute little quotes on them, and thank you so much, Christina, for that. That means the world to me. And if you all would like to be on that posting and are not, all you have to do is contact me through my website. I am delighted to put you on that list. Just connect with us on social media and you'll probably get it. But other than that, and the occasional personal posting, I'm not on it very often. I've got too much to do. I want to connect with people and make all of our lives better, you see. If you are afraid of people, and people that use social media a lot often are, be honest with yourself. That is something that can be moved out. The fact of the matter is you just need to work with someone because you have never learned to work through problems. We've all, in our adult minds, need to learn to work through problems, need to know how to handle someone who is a different opinion from us. And I don't mean handle someone in any kind of manipulative way. We just need to handle it. We need to be able to handle a situation, have a conversation without feeling threatened. You understand? This world is diverse. We should welcome these different opinions. And it all is serving a very large and very metaphysical purpose. And that is that we are going to something that we don't know what it is right now. But all this argument, all this dissension, all of this fear, all of everything that's up right now is serving a purpose to make us, go inside. So it isn't important what the pundits think. As a matter of fact, I find the pundits hilarious because everybody is predicting what the world's going to be like because of a raised eyebrow or a look or a handhold or somebody that doesn't hold the hands. Or for God's sakes, let's not do that. We cannot focus on such mundane things, number one. And number two, we have to get comfortable with uncertainty, because we don't know how any of this is going to turn out. This is a world in turmoil. It is important that it be, so that all of us stop relying on the externals and start listening to the deeper experience of self. It isn't a question of my fixing the government. It is a question of my doing my job here, just today. And when I get off the air, for my family in the next moment. And tomorrow morning when I go to work on individual sessions, doing the best job I can there. Without ego, best job I can. Just getting out of the way and doing the best job I can. That's your choice and your privilege too. We don't do it keeping our noses in our phones and in our tablets. We must have everything in balance. The next point is unhappy people stay in their comfort zones. By the way, I am the first sentence that you hear me say in this list is from 19 Things That Unhappy People Do. It was something online by Pop Sugar. And I thought it was a good place to launch off from. But as you all know, and if you're new to me, you may not know, so I'll tell you, I always just take something, I not always, but sometimes I take things from the media and then expand on them. Because we do something very specifically here, which is consciousness and enlightenment, we have to expand. We can't just accept the sentence. I mean, sometimes I don't agree. As a matter of fact, you've heard that plenty of times, I guess. Okay, so the next thought is that they stay in their comfort zones. Now, I think this is really important, and I think this has to do with just about everything we talked about. What's their comfort zones? What is the comfort zone? Well, you can say the comfort zone is not being visible. The comfort zone is hiding behind the social media and the phone. You can say that, and that's wonderful. But here's the real comfort zone. The real comfort zone is not moving. The real comfort zone is avoidance. These two things that I'm mentioning are really the big creators of unhappiness. If you are not moving, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, you have separated yourself. You have separated yourself from God's energy. God's energy is always there. It's always there. It's all you are. But in ego, and in the ego child's mind, you've separated yourself. Because God is movement. My favorite definition of God is an infinite and ever-expanding set of truths, always in motion. Always in motion. It's taking you deeper and deeper. There's always more to know about God. And by the way, because God is all you are, that means there's more to know about you. There's always more to know. We have to move past our comfort zones. We have to move. We have to move. Mentally, by thinking new thoughts. Emotionally, by feeling different things and deepening things and resolving old emotions and taking on new ways of feeling. We have to move physically. Everybody says exercise is so good. I'm not a real physical person, but I do enough. I always make sure my house has plenty of stairs in it. I go for walks. I go swimming. I go up and down mountains all day. Intense mountains too. And spiritually, we have to learn new things. All of these bodies, mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual, are connected. So oftentimes when I am working on someone's, say, depression, there's a physical cause as well as an emotional and mental cause. And I'm working the whole thing through and often sending them to doctors to find out what exactly is going on, what the block there is physically. My point here is you're not going to be able to stay in your comfort zone and get what you want. That's the whole point of getting what you want, is it expands you. Do you realize all those incredible wants that you have, all those desires that seem beyond your reach? Guess what they are? They're God. They're God saying, expand, open your mind, go further. That's what we should be doing. Instead we budget and we narrow our focus and we say we can't do anything like that. Now, I'm not saying go out and grandiose spend either. That's another problem. I am saying that everything is in balance. We don't narrow our focus. We realize that our desires, our wants are calling from God to know more, to get beyond certain limitations that we have that say, I can't have that. I wouldn't know how that would come to me. Oh, that can't possibly happen. It certainly can. You know, at this point, I want to say, and you've heard me say this before, even in this lecture series, but there's something called the suspension of disbelief. You employ that when you go to the movies or you watch television, because most of the things that are going on the media can't happen. The car doesn't fly over the river. All of these things, no matter how realistic the show, they don't happen that way. So what you do is you're used to suspending your disbelief, because if you did not, you'd sit there going, that can't happen, that can't happen, that can't happen, that can't happen, and you wouldn't enjoy the show at all. Well, use it now. Use that talent now. Say, dear God, I don't know who you are. I don't entirely trust you. I don't know how in the world anything can come to me, but here's what I am wanting. I suspend any disbelief that I can get it while I create in this moment, because I know that you are there. This is what I know and what I want to know more about. So I put myself in that energy to create what I want. You remember, you are the direction that the energy takes. God is the how, because it's going to come to you, whatever it is you want, in the least resistant way. So stop worrying about how. Just stay in the openness that it will happen. You remember that, I don't know why I am off on a tangent, but here I am. Please go back and listen to the radio shows on creating the life you want. I've also written a book on this. It has even more information, of course. It's called The Life You Want. You can get it on my website, Martha Novak, Novak.com. There's a formula for manifesting. The formula is this: desire, you already have that, plus knowingness that lives in expectancy, plus action that you're propelled to take, equals the manifestation of your desires every time. Now, what's the weak part of this? The weak part is knowing. We have grown up not knowing who God is, and therefore not trusting God. And our idea of our trust of God deepens when we know God better. Our trust of ourselves deepens when we know ourselves better. That's what is required here. That's all that's required here, as a matter of fact. And this knowingness lives in expectancy. The next phone call could be something wonderful. The next letter in the mail, somebody who introduces you to somebody at a party. It's an openness on the inside. It's a saying yes to all the possibilities, and then no, instead of no, and never getting around to yes. All right. All of this, ladies and gentlemen, is beyond your comfort zones. Our comfort zones keep us solidly in what the ego child's mind tells us is safe. But the safe place is the limiting place. You see, the ego child's mind, hello, Julia, how do we live in expectancy? Thank you. That's a very good question, Julia. Thank you so much for communicating with me like this. You live in expectancy by, honestly, the only way I know to do it and do it really well is to investigate yourself and to find out why you don't believe what you're trying to believe. Did your mother not believe this way? Did your father not believe this way? Did they believe in their limitations? Mine certainly did. And Julia goes on to say, how do we live in expectancy and not in doubt? You're describing, darling, the human condition. But you're listening to this show, and many, many other people are not. So what does that say about you specifically? Because this has to do with you. It has to do with everybody listening to the show, not what society does. You are listening to this show. So all of these things that we're talking about in terms of the habits of unhappy people, Julia, are part of your system. You have a story of your life. And part of the story of your life is to always doubt, to not trust, to be suspicious, to be cautious, overly cautious, and to avoid when you don't know how to handle things. Well, guess what? I'm here to tell you can learn to handle all of that, so that it just fits into the larger tapestry of who you are, which is authentic and real and moves and does. Doubt is a very small thing. It just means you don't know yourself well enough yet. The work that you must do, my darling, the work that all of you must do, is on the deepest level there is. I can't tell you in my experience of healing years ago, I would have to leave people because I would reach the limit and I could feel it. There would be nothing else that they could give me. Oddly enough, those people would introduce me to whoever the next healer was, and I would go to them for a while, and then them for a while, and then them, and then one day, God told me there was no other, and there wasn't. And that I was supposed to start really listening to myself. I am here to tell you that while I want you to go to doctors, the only real doctor that I believe in is you. And you're going to take the information you learn, and you're going to act on it or not act on it because of what you know. You are the one that knows. So if there's a lot of clutter in there, emotional clutter, we've got to get rid of it so that you have a clarity of mind, so that you are sure of the answers that come from inside you, and that they are coming from a sincere, good place because you're in that space to receive truthful answers and not afraid. So I say, keep going. I can't turn on a light switch for you. You cannot turn one on for yourself. You have to do the work. You have to get to that space of clarity. So Julia, thank you so much. Keep listening and work with us or work with somebody, and let's get you on the other side, because getting on the other side and having doubt go away is inevitable. It is inevitable when you do the deepest work on yourself. I'm the poster child for it. There isn't anything, darlings, that any client or anybody that's ever called on the radio has ever told me that I haven't been through some experience like it. Okay? So what? So what? It was part of a story, and the story isn't valid anymore. I said last week, and I think I said the week before, that there is a progression in consciousness. First of all, we have to be aware of our story. who did what to whom, how we were abused, how we put it together psychologically, emotionally, what we thought about that, all the ramifications. All right, that's great. All part of our story. If we don't do that and we don't start questioning, we always follow in the old script, right? Because that's our story. And it always ends the same way because the ending is always attached to the story. Then, once you work on yourself, you're recognizing that. And you're substituting so that you can create a new story. And everybody comes in and they're so thrilled in session saying, oh, I created this and I created that. Life is so much better. And my advice there is do not stop. Don't stop. Because you should have no story. All stories are pretenses. Really? So what you're heading toward is this moment of such grace. This moment where you are making it a good one. The literal moment. The literal moment. Right now. What are you learning? What are you investing in? What are you enjoying? What are you creating? Right here, right now. This is all that matters. So it becomes a series, not of a story, but of wonderful moments. In the ego child's mind, it cannot understand what I'm talking about. Because in the ego child's mind, the only thing that exists is it. That's the part of us all that thinks like a child. But there's a larger part of us that the ego child's mind is a part of. It knows more. Our higher selves know it all. It knows of the ego child's mind. The ego child's mind doesn't ever know of the highest self. So we have to resolve certain things, move beyond those energies, open it up, and go to something more. I often describe this as a garden. In my garden, people will say, oh, it's such a pretty little garden. It's a small garden, one that I can contain. But if I didn't do anything to that garden, it would be overgrown. It would be crazy. The things that I love so much would die because they aren't getting enough nutrients. Things that I don't want there would steal nutrients from the soil. Our journey to healing and to health and to getting over doubt is like this garden. You've got to get in there and weed it so that the things you want to grow there, like forgiveness and unconditional love and awe for the whole system and the way it works, and compassion for yourself and others, and much, much more, grow in that garden. And this is the same. I mean, we've got to clear it out. And it doesn't matter what kind of family we came from. I want to say that we all, even if we came from what we think are good families, we all have misunderstandings about life. No one corrected these ways we thought. So our ego child's mind thinks that way. For example, God, for many people, is an outside God. That's what we've been taught. God is there in the good times. God is not there in the bad times. Because no one told us that God is there at all times. And it's a matter of working through, and if it's not what we want, it's not the end. Nobody's ever taught us that. We're here to learn that now and develop ourselves now. So, Julia, I say you're in the process of developing. Be patient with that. Keep going. Find the right teachers. Let's get you through this. And keep going. The clients that I have been with me anywhere from 15 to 19 years because they just want more and more and more and more and more. How far can you go in all of this? It's very exciting. Nobody wants to give it up. I don't want to give it up. It'll be what I do for myself forever, and what I'm trying to do for you all. If you need my help, by all means, write me through the website. I'm Martha at marthanovak.com. And we can We can work with you. So I hope that helps. It's like you manifest and you plant a fertile seed and you give it light and you give it water, but the next day you go out and you dig it up because you want to make sure that it's all right. And if you do that enough, it's not going to grow. Why do that? Why not suspend your disbelief, leave it there, make sure it's getting the proper light and water, and harvest when it's done, you see? Thank you, Julia. A lot of conversation about that one. You provided it for us. Thank you so much, dear heart. That just is so generous. I have the most generous listening audience in the world and the most generous clients because everybody says, oh yeah, use my story, no problem. Okay, here's the next point. They worry about what other people think. There is a life pattern. That means a decision that you made as a very small child that says, I have to look good. I have to look good. Guys, all of us don't look good from time to time. We just don't look good. Sometimes we appear a fool. Sometimes we appear stupid. I can give you stories of my own life where that has happened, guys. It's human. You have to learn to accept being human because here's the rub. Here's something absolutely so interesting to me. You hear that the studies that we're doing right now are esoteric, and they are. And one of the reasons they're esoteric, in other words, hidden, is because what you want is hidden in what you're avoiding. For example, you are embarrassed about something you've done that just has to do with your being human, and you cover it up and you avoid it and you try not to see it and you make fun of it, or you don't want to think about it, or you drink yourself to death that night, or whatever, however you handle this. Your divinity is in the acceptance of that. Your divinity is in the acceptance of your humanness. Until you relax and you say, yes, I'm weak and I'm strong and I'm this and I'm that and I'm everything. Until you get to that point where you can go, I'm everything, you're never going to be at peace. But that's the inevitable result of consciousness work, where you say, everything's all right. Everything's 100% all right now. What's odd about that remark, and people are always laughing because I'm always saying, why isn't that all right? It is all right, because the only reason, and then I say, well, tell me why that isn't all right, and everybody is quiet at that point, and they say the only thing I can think of are ego answers, child's mind answers, and I say, well, there you are, because the truth is, everything's 100% all right. We can't help what other people think. And your emphasis is on the wrong thing, because what it should be on is developing yourself to be the best you can be. And being forgiving of yourself and kind to yourself and having mercy on this little being known as you. It is about learning and developing and growing and doing what you need to do for that. It's not about what other people think about it. I think there's a really interesting mystery in the Bible where Jesus disappeared for 18 years. And when he came back, he emerged as some sort of avatar, this Jesus that all the churches talk about. He disappeared for 18 years. What do you think he was doing? I say, some sort of work on himself. Because you just don't get there without it. But it's very private. And the reason those 18 years have disappeared from any of our Western literature is because it's really about Jesus and what he did. It's about you and what you're going to do as you move through your understanding of God and find out that God is all you are and all it's ever been. The confusing thing about God, you see, is that God presents two ways according to your understanding. It presents us the absence of itself, the lack, the fear, or it presents us the fullness of itself, which is the love, even unconditional love if you go far enough, and the beneficence and the creativity and the kindness and the incredible ability to manifest well and heal yourself and everything else. You see? You have these two parts of you. Which one are you investing in? And you would say, right now, probably the ego child's mind. Well, then that's getting way too much energy. That energy, the things that you must release from that, a good healer can release from there. And what do you think happens? All the energy goes into the spiritual body from the emotional body, and that's why you wake up to grace. That's why you wake up to consciousness. If you go far enough, we call you enlightened. You've got to transfer these energies and release them so that they go where they naturally are, and you become the spiritual being in physical form. It's a much easier place to live there. It doesn't mean you deny anything in life, all the hurts, all the things that are going on. It doesn't mean that you're just in perpetual joy. It means that you understand the system, and it is unshakable in your mind in terms of the privilege it is to walk this wonderful life. It is just not that enormous stress and burden life is sometimes. It ceases to be that. It becomes nothing but a privilege. There are a lot of components to that. One of them is something I've just mentioned, and that is for you to know God so well that you don't feel like God deserts you in the rough times of your life, because God doesn't. All the more reason for you to take care of yourself, all the more reason for you to do what you need to do that's the right thing, all the more reason for you to pray and have a spiritual discipline, all the more reason for you to know how to handle problems and learn. It's a great learning experience. Okay. You'll notice that none of this has to do with what other people think about you. This is about what you think about you. Not in any kind of pretentious way. Well, I'm going to tell my truth. I love that line. It comes right out of the ego. I have to tell my truth now. I haven't told my truth. It's just a disguise, guys. Forget telling your truth. Let's just be real, and let's express quietly, and let's do what we need to do in a loving and generous way. Right? Don't disguise the ego child's mind experience. We're all selfish. We're all narcissistic. We're all everything, but we're also a lot more. Now, what do you want to invest your energy in? If you invest your energy in, if you don't believe there's more, in studying if there is more, invest in that and see where it goes. And perhaps one day you'll be believing much more than you ever have, and your life will be easier. The next point has to do with the one I've just made, that you care what other people think. This is that people who are unhappy gossip and speak negatively about others. And the reason, I'm going to say, that they do that is because they do that to themselves. When you are vilifying yourself, criticizing yourself, And you do it in very subtle ways and you don't even notice it because it's so habitual. You learn to do this. Perhaps your mother and father did it. Perhaps they did it to you. I don't know. But you have learned that, and it becomes part of your story. And you are doing this to yourself. In fact, we're all doing this to ourselves, guys. And we've got to wake up. Good morning, Michelle. We've got to wake up and realize, wait a minute. I am doing this to myself. I'm going to stop that kind of talk. Because when it gets bad enough, and when we can't stand doing this to ourselves anymore, and we do it to others, and we say they're the cause of my unhappiness, and they're not the cause of your unhappiness at all. We're the cause of our unhappiness. We often criticize in others what we don't like about ourselves in some way. And I think that's a real important thing to know, particularly in a marriage. If you're criticizing someone else, look at yourself first to see if you're doing that. And then go to them and say, I was criticizing you for this, but I'm doing as much as you are. So can we talk about this and try to work this out? That's a mature way to do it. You see? The next point is people that are unhappy work too much. They work too much. You've got to realize that you are being paid for an amount of time. Make sure you're paid for that amount of time. And then you've got to have a balanced life to boot. Progressive companies realize you've got to have a balanced life, but there are companies, and I'm a business coach, and I can tell you there are companies that have very bad reputations because they take young, starry-eyed talent and they work them absolutely to death to the point of burnout, and then they let them go and they get some more starry-eyed talent in. There are many companies that work that way. You've got to be discerning. When you're going to get a job, you're trying to find something that matches you and that you match too. This is a mutual decision. This is not some great person on high that can bestow a job on you and you're so lucky to have it. You better look at all this, right? And be reasonable about it all. And what I mean by that is sometimes you just need to work for money. Well, if you're destitute, then you need to go out and get a job, and you can't afford to do what I'm doing, but the next job you can afford to do that with. You just need to make some money and save it. Another thing that I'm noticing too with people is they'll work too much and they'll isolate and withdraw, and they know they're doing this, but they never are kind to themselves in any way, shape, or form, except when they're soothing themselves when they isolate and withdraw. So this is an imbalance. You've got to be kinder to yourself every single moment, right? And then you won't need to isolate and withdraw. So it's showing such a lack of consideration for self that you're having to do something extreme on the back end. And you like that. You like that system because at least you get some soothing. At least you get to do what you want. It's not healthy. A sister issue to this too is sometimes, and this doesn't have to do with working too much, but I do, when I was meditating and doing this with you this morning, Spirit told me to say it. I've also known a lot of people who are afraid to live, so they live through other people. They live their lives through other people. If someone's very exciting, for example, they'll attach to that person. They'll want to be with them all the time. They'll want to be in that group because they can't generate anything exciting on their own. And I think this is a very important thing. You've got to learn to generate the excitement on your own. You've got to learn that you're worth doing it for. Many of us don't know that. I didn't used to know that years and years ago, that I'm worth creating something wonderful for. If you don't know that yet, that's going to be part of your spiritual journey, and one day you're going to wake up to that. We've got to remove, there are two parts to this. You've got to remove and resolve what's in the past that's holding you, and you've got to wake up to the new way of doing things. Riding on somebody else's coattails, not good. We want you to create your life. You're here for a reason. There's something that you've got to give the world. There's something that is energetically ready to come out of you if it hasn't already. And if you don't know what that is, because this isn't a mental exercise, it is an opening to exercise. You got to get things out of the way and open to it, and all of a sudden you'll be contributing. You see? And you're going to love it, because all of this is based on your own talents, gifts, and abilities. I get so tickled when people say, I don't want to do this work because God will take me in a direction I don't want to go. Well, God is you. You're the direction you're going to go. Now get out of your ego way and let's see what's really there and change the world by changing you first. The next point is these people that are unhappy never indulge themselves. They never give themselves pleasure, except, as I said, for the soothing that comes once they have abused themselves in some way. It's very important to find out what pleasure is. Pleasure and gratification. Now, I've done lectures on pleasure and gratification. They're quite different before. But here is it in a nutshell. Pleasure is momentary. If I see a beautiful sunset, I'm going to enjoy that thoroughly. But when it's gone, I don't think of it again. That's a very good example of pleasure. These wonderful momentary things that make us feel better. Great. But gratification, on the other hand, gratification to me is sitting down and writing my next book. Oh man, I love it. I'm struggling with it. I'm afraid of it. I love it, and I wouldn't be doing anything else. That's gratification. It takes more energy. It's harder to do. But at the end of the night, when I am finished working, I feel good. I feel gratified. Your life should have more gratification in it than pleasure, but you should have both. Unhappy people don't let themselves do that. So if there's a class that you've never taken that you'd like to take, if there's something that you would like to do, I think it's really important for you to go on and do it. Really, I do. It's time to develop yourself now. I have another client who is long since beyond this now, but she used to not let herself rest because she thought that was an indulgence. So she'd work herself into smithereens, and there'd be all sorts of loose ends out there, and then she couldn't sleep at night. Took me a while to get her to see what she was doing, but she saw it, and now she's catching those moments. She's changing those moments, and life is much better for her. Okay. Indulgence is all right. In balance. Everything is all right. In balance. In balance. People who are unhappy are okay with settling. I urge you, and I urge everyone who goes on this path, usually people listen, I hope you will for this, and that is don't be okay with settling. Your life is going to improve when you start doing some sort of work like this. Your life will improve, and it will steadily improve. Some people have come from such miserable lives that when they get to a certain degree of relief here, as this work provides, they'll go, oh, that's just fabulous, and they want to stop. Don't stop. Do not stop. That's a trap. Don't stop. Keep going. It's just going to get better and better and better and better and better and better and better. We can all tell you. I think settling really is, I've got to tell you, I think some people, it's their choice, and there's something to learn in settling. I don't think anybody that's particularly listening to this show wants to stop there. I would suggest you don't. Next point, they refuse to forgive. You've heard that forgiveness doesn't hurt the other person, it hurts you, and that's true. It's like a big old hairball clogging the channel of God. And if you will think of hairballs, nothing can really get in and nothing can get out. We've got to dismantle that hairball of unforgiveness and forgive. That doesn't mean condone. That doesn't mean letting somebody else win. This is not this is not a game. But we have to forgive so that you are released and go on. You see, unforgiveness is still a relationship, isn't it? And sometimes when we have had a bad relationship with someone and we don't want to entirely let go, we'll use anger or we'll use unforgiveness or something like that because it's still a relationship. Let go. Let go. It's in everybody's interest just to let go. And let that energy change. This doesn't allow anybody to win who has done an egregious thing. This allows you to love more and to be free. Not necessarily to love them or not love them. It just allows you to be free. You'll have that choice of what to do with the energy. You might invest it in your creativity or in a new level of learning or in the love for your family right now as it is. Something to investigate, guys. We are enormously unforgiving and we think we are forgiving because we are in avoidance. Oh, I've done all that work on my mother. I'm well over that. Yeah. Anybody who tells me that, no. No. That's the energy of avoidance. You don't want to go anymore. You've just gotten to a level now and you're not going to go past it. But there's something else to get. Let's get it. All these things are puffs of air. They're the way you've thought. They're the way you've felt. They can be moved out. These things are an illusion. So let's move them. Next, and I'm kind of clicking along because I've only got 27 minutes left. They avoid learning to work through anything and therefore planning anything. Planning also requires a great deal of adaptability and flexibility. So you can't marry anything you decide to do, right? You have to be willing to learn and grow and to shift and to add to and to change things. We were not born into this world knowing how to work through anything. And our parents gave us very little of that. And the reason they did was not because they were bad parents, but because you're supposed to learn to do that on your own. It's part of coming out of the ego child's mind and into the highest self mind. How you can create these wonderful win-win situations for yourself and for all others. So one of the great deal parts of my program is, I'm a business coach, I'm a creative coach, I'm a peak performance coach, I'm all of that. Man, we often dip into what to do at business, what to do with this, what to do, how to speak to somebody. And you've got to learn that from someone. So don't beat yourself up that you don't know. Not many people know. So we'll teach you. That's all. But you've got to learn to work through things. Otherwise, you got to go back into what you did when you were a child and avoid situations you don't know how to handle. And that's never good. And that pulls you away from you being a participant and a contributor, doesn't it? Those energies are not compatible. Next. They focus only on themselves as a perpetual victim. And not only do they focus on themselves as a perpetual victim, but they perpetuate the perpetual victim. We call it in our work, I'm perpetuating the perpetuation. Absolutely. We are doing it. by our thoughts, by our deeds, and by the way we feel, we are perpetuating our victimhood. If you're perpetuating your victimhood, you're communicating with the universe. What's it going to give you more of? Well, you know the answer to that. Whatever the majority of your energy is in, that's what you get more of. You see? Okay. Next point. They focus on themselves and their story. Actually, this is the same point. They focus on themselves and their story. And their story is that they're the perpetual victim. You're not. No one's a victim here. It's what you do in your mind. One of my favorite writers is Viktor Frankl. He was a psychologist. He wrote Man's Search for Meaning and The Doctor and the Soul and many, many other fine books. I do suggest you read them. And he was, and I said this to you in a prior class, but I think I'm going to say it again. He was swept up by the Nazis and put in a concentration camp. He was working on Man's Search for Meaning at the time, and the book was taken away and confiscated, I'm sure burned. He lost it, never got it back. And he said the thing that kept him alive in the concentration camp was working on that book in his head, stealing little scraps of paper or anything that he could actually write on, hiding those notes when he could find something like that. It gave his life meaning. Your life having meaning gives you resilience. But you've got to go on a search for who you really are and what you want to bring forth out of who you really are, because it doesn't work the other way around, before you can have that kind of feeling of meaning. Michelle just wrote, she said, it's interesting how people get so stuck in their stories and they just want to hold on to them. Boggles my mind sometimes. Thank you, Michelle. You're absolutely right. We love our stories. I was a really good storyteller at one point, and again, part of all of our stories is what a victim we are. And in a particularly big time in my life, I heard the voice say to stop telling my story. So every time I started, I stopped myself and I was quiet, or I took the conversation somewhere else. And that helped. So those of you that are still caught in your story, a perpetual victim, I urge you to be aware of what you're saying while you're saying it, and stop yourself from saying the same thing over and over and over again. You're saying the same thing over and over and again because you're thinking the same thing over and over again, and you're feeling the same thing over and over again. And by your actually interrupting at any point in that breakdown, you're going to change that. Thank you so much, Michelle, for bringing that up. My next point is there are people who never learn to make good decisions for themselves, to look at everything, to consider. Some people are very impetuous in their decision making for various reasons, and I think it's extremely important to slow down and to learn to make good decisions, and to learn to make decisions that are based in reality and not fantasy. You see, fantasy is its own reward, and if we're making a decision because we're being in fantasy, you're going to end up in a bad place. You can get out of it probably, but it'd be better not to get in it to begin with, right? I have a dear friend who constantly throws herself into really perfectly dreadful relationships. And she throws herself into these dreadful relationships by fantasizing it's already a relationship. She hasn't even met them. She hasn't had coffee with them yet. She may or may not have even had a conversation with them on the phone. And yet this is a relationship. All right? This is not a good decision. Fantasy propels us in all sorts of bad ways. And that's one of the things that can get her in trouble. And every single time, what's revealed, thank God, now before she's even met them, is that they're crazy, some of these people. Her life has been in danger before with these nuts. Fantasy is where you go to feel good, and you can go, oh, I feel so good because I'm so in love. There's this guy that there's a potential for such wonderful stuff. Guys, no. Look, this is a business decision. Certainly at my age it is. I don't have those hormones running around saying procreate, procreate anymore. What is, who you are with is going to influence the rest of your life. I don't believe in your sacrificing your life for another. That's not what I'm talking about. But being in partnership is a compromise. That's one of the biggest decisions you'll ever make. Don't be in fantasy for that or anything else, or for a business fantasy. Oh, I'm going to take this job and they're just going to love me and I'm going to write. No, a lot of factors, a lot of other people involved in how well you do. Now, I can tell you, like I did with the man who's risen through IT really well, I can tell you how to do this if you want to know, and how to rise through as fast as you can. But there are other factors, too, that we need to consider. I think it's I think you make, as you do consciousness work, you make better and better and better decisions. First of all, you are learning to work with the system of God and listen and not move if you don't hear something, and move if you do, and do exactly what you are told in your highest, from your highest self. Always works out. So the clarity of mind comes with the work on the self. Unhappy people, next point, never give themselves anything to look forward to. I don't have anything to look forward to. Old story. Doing something that you're looking forward to. New story, you see? Oh, I don't have anything to look forward to. Well, generate something. Move. Do something. Think new thoughts. Have new feelings. Do what you need to do for your physical body. Go on a spiritual opening, a quest of sorts, to see what's down there and how far you can go, which has always been real interesting to me. Next point. Unhappy people don't search for answers. They settle. They don't search for answers. For example, their depression. Do you understand that there can be mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual causes for depression? You hear me talk about one thing, which is depression being a repository for unresolved feelings that you don't want to touch. Okay, that's a good one. But there can be physical reasons for it too. The point that I'm making here is that unhappy people never take those steps to search and find out why. Guys, you got to search and find out why. Mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, you need to find out why. You need to search. You need to search for answers for whatever is bothering you. Unhappy people do not. There's the word again. They settle. Don't settle. Keep going. You're happier, even if you haven't found the answers, when you keep going. By the way, there will be an answer, but you keep going. I said, because there's community out there. There is participation out there. There are oftentimes answers out there. And this is the energy of the movement of God, which is all you are at the highest level. You bet you're going to feel better doing that. You see? Next point. People that are unhappy never challenge themselves and what they're thinking or feeling. They just indulge in it. This is not a great indulgence. You remember that when I use the word indulgent, it can come from the egoic child's mind, which is what I'm talking about here. Or it can come from the highest self when I say occasionally indulge yourself, have some fun, you know? Challenge yourself about what you're thinking. It's interesting because someone the other day who had a mentally ill mom was saying, oh, I'm afraid that, I've inherited what she had. And I said, really, you haven't, by the very nature that you are challenging yourself and worried about it and trying to work through it. I think this will be quite a different situation for her, because mental emotional illness just does it. They don't challenge themselves. Is this wrong? And certainly, even if they do challenge themselves, they don't investigate it any further. They're too afraid to, in many cases. I want you to work on yourself thinking negatively, because unhappy people think negatively. And I need you to keep a rolling log of whether you're thinking negatively or positively. And I want you to control your thoughts too, because you remember we talked about the primary emotions and the secondary emotions. I will say this again. Primary emotions are appropriate emotions to the circumstance. Primary emotions, your boss cuts you off in a meeting, a board meeting, a staff meeting, okay? Cuts you off, and you feel awful about that. You don't like being cut off. You felt like he was exerting authority over you. You felt diminished, okay? All right. Secondary emotions that are invalid, because they're mind reading and personalizing everything, is nobody ever likes me. I'm always having a hard time. I'm going to have to leave this job just like I've left all the others. What in the world is going on? What did I do wrong? I always do something wrong. I can't negotiate life because I'm always doing something wrong and I don't know what it is. Throw those away. Primary emotions. Primary emotions tell you how to fix things. Primary emotions. Okay, I felt diminished in the meeting. I felt bad. It was complete turnaround because the boss likes me. I don't understand this at all. What would you think you would do with those? Well, I'd go right into the boss's office, shut the door, and say, what happened out there? This actually happened to a client of mine. It was really interesting because she worried about it all weekend long. She was going to have to go quit. She was going to do all this. She just made herself perfectly miserable. Spoiled the weekend because this event with the boss happened on Friday. Spoiled the whole weekend. Horrible weekend, right? Suffered the whole time. At the end, she said, well, I'm just got to go and see whether, I should quit or not. So she walked in the office Monday morning and she said, I'm trying to do this. And the boss said, oh, I'm so sorry about that. Let me tell you, I told you that in private. I forgot to tell you I told you that in private. Didn't want you to bring it up because we don't want anybody else knowing about that until we deal with it. If she'd just done that Friday, she wouldn't have had to worry about anything. As it was, she lost a weekend. Okay. The next point. People that are into not shifting and changing are usually very dramatic. We call it histrionic. They're histrionic. And they will fight the truth. They'll fight people that are trying to help them. They'll fight what we're saying. They will come at you with force, and they'll raise their voice, and they'll thrash around, and they'll burst into tears. And I had one man, he was a coach too, fall off the couch and roll around on the floor. Come on. Come on. Come on. All of that drama is completely unnecessary. And if you are prone to the dramatic, you're doing it as a defense, trying to keep people away, trying to frighten them or scare them or intimidate them enough to back off. And somebody like this can't be helped until they stop doing that. Until they're willing to confront, wait a minute, I'm being very dramatic here. Do I need to do that? It's getting in the way. I'm doing that because I'm vulnerable. Why don't I just be vulnerable and see what happens? Now, it's not as easy as that. You learned drama at the feet of a master. If you're realizing this, one of your parents was this dramatic. I have a family that I work with where the kid is very dramatic because the mother was so dramatic. As she said that when the mother walked in the room, she sucked all the air out. There was nothing left for anybody else. So she had to yell louder and bigger, and her problems had to be much larger than her mother's to get any attention at all. And she's still doing that these days. Important not to do it. Okay. The last point I want to make here is about spiritual foundations. I've been doing this a long time. I've been observing people for a very long time. And the people that have had no spiritual foundation at all, whether it be anything in the cosmic realm, metaphysical realm, or anything in the snake handling realm, it doesn't matter, anything in between, people that have not had some sort of spiritual foundation, have a real hard time coping. Now, what do if you are one of those people? You go on a search, because many people believe in God, and many people realize this energy. God is energy to me. I don't believe, this is just my philosophy, you don't have to believe what I believe. I don't believe in the devil. I believe in evil, by the way. I think it's the absence of love. I think it's the ego child's mind running rampant. And I believe in certain disorders that create all sorts of chaos. But is there a force of evil like the devil? I don't believe that worth a flip. I think it's really important that even if you don't believe in something, that you go on a search for something, for what is. Call it anything you want. I mean, I happen to believe God is everything, so you can call it the lamp for all I care. You don't have to use the word God. I hope if you do this work or some similar work that you will one day use all the words and not be afraid of them to use. But it's really important that there be a path out of things. The path out of things is energy. And God is energy, and you are energy. So you need to find out more about that. It's okay, whatever you believe right now. It's okay to be full of doubt. All of it is okay. But what are you going to do in this moment? And I would suggest that you learn more. You can always deny anything you want. It's interesting how the church, in many cases, I'm thinking of one particular case, has so turned this man off that I know, that he puts God in that category. So God and the church are the same thing, and he denies it all, without ever investigating who God is beyond the church. You see? Someone else that I know got into a Jesus cult because he felt like such a victim. And Jesus was the classic victim of God, it turned out, he believed. That's not true, by the way. And he identified with Jesus, but that old God he was a little touchy about. He was pretty afraid of him. Guys, there's nothing in the world to be afraid of. It's our past repeating itself over and over and over and over again. So what does that tell you? We need to resolve the past. The work that we do here at my company help you do that. You can get on my website, marthanovak.com. I am delighted to help you. My team is delighted to help you. There are people that are listed that have been studying with me for years that are certified now and perfectly marvelous at what they do. We work on the phone. We work remotely. We can work on somebody in France. We can work on somebody in California. We work on people all over the world. That's what we do, okay? If you're being called to know more and to be on a deeper level of consciousness and to get your life happy and straight, not that you won't be happy without this work, but you'll be happier with it, I can tell you that, we'll be delighted to help. Or there are many healers out there, and you may have to go on the path that I did, and that is you go to one person, they stop, you go to the other person, they stop, you go to the next person, they stop, until you find your way home. But home you will find. Guys, it is, we've got 4 minutes left, so let me say I appreciate your listening so much. By the way, next week, yes, Kat, you're absolutely right. Michelle said absolutely, and Kat said, I believe that we are God, we are as one. That's absolutely right. We are one thing. We're all the same energy. You're not going to lose your personality, by the way, in this great maelstrom of God, for God's sake. This is where we are more focused and more deliberate in what we bring forth, because it's supposed to be what we specifically bring forth. It isn't all this ego mishmash out there that tells us, oh, we are just great and this is going to be the greatest thing in the whole world and this is and I'm going to be a star. No. In God, we bring forth who we really are and we contribute out of that. And if you don't think that's unique and wonderful, then maybe you need to study a little more. That's unique and wonderful. I want to make the announcement that we are not going to have a live show next week, October 13th. I'm taking a little time off to have some fun and go to a fair. But I'll be back on October 20th. Now, when I'm absent like this, I'm going to ask you all to please listen to the archive shows. They're archived on Blog Talk Radio, Facebook Live, and YouTube. Please listen to some of the other shows that we have, because it will help you understand what we're doing right now if you'll go back and listen to some of these other shows that you might be interested in. We have, I don't know how many out there, 100 of them, and they're all on different subjects, and you can pick and choose what you want. They're real important for you. And I'll be back on the 20th. Oh, well, thank you so much, Michelle. Michelle says she loves starting her Sunday mornings with us, and I love starting my Sunday mornings with you too, as a matter of fact. That's so fun. I get up at 6:30 every Sunday, and I'm meditating on what we're going to talk about, and there we are. Then it comes out. So I have lots of fun. I don't know what we're going to be doing week after next, but we'll think of some good subject. Oh, thank you, Kat. Thank you so much.
90 seconds.
Whoops, 90 seconds. Let's do a prayer. Dear God, who is all there is. Oh, we have someone who is calling in, and darling, you've just hit right in the last minute and a half, so I'm not going to be able to answer that today. Please call back in 2 weeks. We'd love to talk with you, or write me at marthanovak.com. Dear God, thank you so much for all of this that we have been working on today. We appreciate it with all our hearts. We open ourselves now.
60 seconds.
And we say that we invite you to come in with all love. Show us what we need to do, and our next step. That's all we need to take, is the next step, and the next, and the next. We thank you so much, dear God, for all of this. Thank you. And so it is. Amen. Well, thank you so much, Julia. Julia has said she heard herself. And that is a wonderful thing. I appreciate it. I love you all, and I care about each and every one of you. I really do. we're all in this boat together, aren't we? We're all striving and trying and doing the best we can. Now let's open to more. How about it? Love you all. See you in 2 weeks, okay? Bye-bye.
10.